Story 1. I admire the older generations, specifically the well-adjusted majority, for their social comfort. They can approach anyone, greet them, engage in small talk, introduce themselves, and hold conversations without the social anxiety that many of us experience today. It seems to come naturally to them. Story 2. I admire how older generations seem to have a deeper sense of resilience and patience. Additionally, there is a strong respect for how they value community and face-to-face connections, especially in today's digital world. They seem to know how to create real connections in a way that feels grounded and authentic. Story 3. They had authentic experiences from a first-person point of view. They are not thinking of the moment they are in from a third-person perspective. Story 4. Something broke, and they fixed it instead of throwing it out for something new. Improvise if something doesn't go right. I believe they took more pride in their work or created things that were built to last. Story 5. Two things stand out: how cool they are at fixing things without searching the internet, and how, at times, they think highly of themselves due to their greater experience. Story 6. I'm an elder millennial, but what I like about Generation X and older generations is their sense of humor. The nuance and depth of it, too, along with their ingenuity to never give up. Story 7. I love seeing a group of older gentlemen at a Dunkin' Donuts or McDonald's getting coffee every morning. They are there daily. I aspire to that lifestyle. Story 8. The lack of desire for individualism is apparent. Talking to Generation X and older feels like talking to real people. Some of my peers and most of the younger generation seem to be wearing a mask. Story 9. I appreciate older individuals who do not pretend to be perfect. I enjoy hearing their entertaining stories about mistakes they've made and how they manage to navigate the consequences, allowing them to continue enjoying life. Story 10. Most sentences between men do not start or end with bro. I also dislike how many younger people talk to each other as if they are in a comment section. Story 11. Information includes many old skills and basic daily tips that can get lost over time. There are also tough life lessons that we often overlook, and they tend to have a more effective way of explaining these concepts than we do. Story 12. They are generally more thoughtful in everything they do. I love older people. They have the best conversations. Story 13. They have provided for us so we could enjoy the luxuries we have today. Of course, there are always some bad apples, but judging a whole group based on a few rotten ones is not the way to go. I have nothing but love, gratitude, and respect for the older generation. Thank you. Story 14. I appreciate the predominantly independent nature of, I got this. I can do it. I can fix it. It's a kind of can-do attitude. I'm not sure what caused that to vanish so thoroughly, but I am drawn to people with this disposition. I dislike complaining without taking action. Being able to carry on a conversation is important. I belong to the younger generation, and my peers often cannot engage in anything without being distracted by their phones. I often interrupt a quiet dinner table by saying something like, I want to be on my phone like all the cool kids. Conversations are boring in person anyway. I like that conversations are becoming more reciprocal. Can be exhausting playing 20 questions. These are generalizations, but it's just my opinion. Story 15. The strong sense of community and connection with others is evident. My grandparents and parents knew many people from my hometown, which is not something Generation Z engages in to the same extent as older generations. Story 16. Generally speaking, they are good at social mechanics, especially when compared to younger generations. They know how to greet people properly, balance etiquette with warmth, and facilitate introductions between mutual friends while keeping the conversation flowing. I can't tell you how many parties I've attended with Gen Z and millennial hosts who completely fail to make introductions between strangers. It's so easy to do. Story 17. They had it much harder than I did. They all carried heavy wooden ladders and walked miles uphill, often in the snow. Story 18. Silent generation. They take action without complaints. Baby boomers. They are audacious, believing they can achieve incredible things. Generation X. They have excellent music. Generation Y. They continually rise after facing economic challenges. Story 19. I appreciate how older generations did not grow up with social media. As a millennial born in 1993, I came of age when social media was emerging. I feel it made me more anxious about my appearance and social life, often leading to comparisons with others. Now, I find myself detaching from social media, smartphone use, and television more than ever, realizing how overstimulating they can be. Story 20. My grandfather was 102 years old when he passed away last year. I always admired his strength despite losing all his siblings, my grandmother, and one of my aunts. Mentally and physically, he was tough as he was a carpenter and a mechanic. He built things and worked on cars until his late 80s. Being part of the greatest generation, he is a man I look up to. Story 21. I like that they got lead poisoned and I didn't. I don't know if microplastics in my brain is a better deal, though. Story 22. They take their time with things. There is not as much of a rush to do anything. They are not living for the next dopamine hit. Story 23. The fact that they actually speak to each other and are more social is overshadowed by the fact that everyone is distracted by their phones. Story 24. Willingness to talk to strangers and socialize in person is something I admire in the sane individuals from Generation X and the baby boomer generation. I feel that millennials, and especially those of us in Generation Z, are far too disconnected from our communities. We should engage with the workers at the grocery store, meet up in the park, and converse with our neighbors. Story 25. I like how older people seem much calmer than us. I think social media has made us all either anxious or nervous due to the constant influx of information we receive. I didn't used to believe in the term ignorance is bliss, but seeing how the older generation gets by without a smartphone and how happy they seem, I'm starting to doubt that sentiment. Story 26. Their taste in music and cars is distinct. I'm not one of those Generation Z individuals who believes that their music and cars are superior to those of the past, but there are some solid hits among the things they do enjoy. Story 27. I love hearing their life stories. It is fascinating to learn about what life was like during a period I was not born in. Story 28. The older generation truly appreciated the little things, valued relationships, and enjoyed being with others. This perspective likely stemmed from their experiences during World War II and the rationing that occurred. My grandma took nothing for granted. Story 29. You know what's interesting? The way they write in cursive. Watching my grandma write birthday cards is like observing an artist at work. Meanwhile, my handwriting resembles that of a chicken that has lost control. Story 30. They had more good shows. They had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers, Looney Tunes, and more. This generation has some good shows, but not many. Story 31. I appreciate how people used to dress with pride. My great-grandfather wore a tie every day, even if he was just going to the grocery store. In old pictures, even the poorest individuals wore shirts, coats, ties, and hats. What do we have now? Meat dresses? Whatever Bianca Censori was wearing. Story 32. Broadly speaking about older generations that are still alive today, they are skilled at fixing things and working with their hands. They can perform mental math quickly. They fought and won a world war and led the counterculture revolution in the 1960s. They do not spend all day complaining about issues online. Story 33. They have patience in their daily lives. There is not a constant pace of life. Things are slower. They are not living for the next moment of excitement. They savor the moment. They live life instead of rushing through it. Story 34. The fact that they have so much life experience and the way they dress, especially the older aunts, is notable. Story 35. I feel that family life was better in the past, and I am envious of your ability to buy a house and a car on a middle-class income. Story 36. I have yet to find something my dad doesn't know how to fix without even looking at a video. The sheer number of home and car maintenance tips he has given me over the years is incredible. Story 37. A group of elderly individuals have lived rich lives. Some possess hearts of gold, while others have been affected negatively by their experiences. Story 38. I like people in their 80s because they have been around longer than I have and have very interesting stories from their younger days. Story 39. They had many opportunities to meet people organically. There were dances, dance clubs, and malls. I miss malls in the 1990s and 2000s when you could roam with friends for hours and have fun. While it's nice to talk to others online from around the world, I miss the effort it took to go out and meet new people. Story 40. They have a better sense of community and acknowledge the people around them. I live in an area with an abundance of older people and used to provide on-site technical support, so I drove around to many places, particularly neighborhoods with elderly residents. The elderly almost always smile and wave when you're driving by or if they see me as I get out of my car. They often say good morning or greet me with a smile. It's never anything in-depth, but they at least acknowledge one another's existence in a welcoming and civil manner. In other neighborhoods, you could see many people out and about, and they often ignore you every time. Story 41. This is limited to South Korea, as our older generation experienced liberation, war, poverty, military dictatorship, democratization, and significant economic growth within their lifetimes. I have nothing but respect for them. Story 42. Someone mentioned that much of their music is better, which is true. I appreciate that older generations have the experience of working hard to find good records, films, books, and art. We have it much easier when it comes to discovering media we enjoy, so it's nice to meet older people who have had great taste for over 30 years. Story 43. As much as I have complained about older people in the past due to poor customer service interactions, where I was on the receiving end of unreasonable complaints, they are often very wise about basic life matters. I believe that if I needed help with something, asking an older family member would be a great option. They can be stubborn and set in their ways, but they have navigated life and figured out many things that I could still learn from. Story 44. Nobody was trying to get famous or be an influencer. Having a basic job with a family was more than enough for them. It seems like no one is happy today. Story 45. Really old people often say whatever they want, and they can get away with it because of their age. I want that energetic grandmother vibe now, where I can do whatever I please. It's inspiring. Story 46. Older generations in the Balkans built houses, raised children, worked full-time, and fought off random wars. Yet they still had the energy to scold you for leaving the door open. Story 47. Being knowledgeable in many life-saving skills, my father can read maps, camp outside, hunt, forage, and repair many things. In contrast, if we were to return to the Stone Age in an instant, I would likely be the first to perish. Story 48. Older individuals can strike up a conversation with anyone and often receive valuable life advice in return. Meanwhile, I find it challenging to even call my dentist without feeling anxious. Story 49. They have memories instead of pictures on their phones. They tell a story of the moment rather than showing a video. Story 50. Some people know how to fix old vehicles and engines. Cleaning carburetors and gapping spark plugs are skills that are slowly fading away. Story 51. We come from such a different world. There is no other way to put it. I really enjoy talking and working with younger people, but I cannot deny they have no idea about the world I grew up in, and I, in turn, have no idea about theirs, even though I am in it. Story 52. I remember my grandparents and the people around them advocated for the issues they believed in. For example, if a new fee was added, they would avoid that place. I feel like the current generation is often overlooked. Story 53. As an older person, many aspects that people appreciate about the older generation come with age and experience. Story 54. How I was taught to be traditional and to follow my dreams. I hold very high standards for myself. I know my worth, but I still believe in the importance of hard work. They taught me everything I know, either through movies or through direct instruction. Story 55. The younger generation appears to be perpetually lost, uncertain about how to exist and who they are. Story 56. Many of them may be closed-minded, but they are also less judgmental about certain things. For instance, when you socialize with them, they are unlikely to talk negatively about you behind your back regarding trivial matters. You do not have to fit in by acting, dressing, or looking a certain way. You do not need to be considered cool by them because they have moved past the need to appear cool. Story 57. I like that older generations grew up without many entertainment distractions. They know how to simply hang out without devices. They know how to fix things without searching online. They are much better at talking on the phone and to strangers. Most impressive is their work ethic. I would much rather work with a 50-year-old than a 25-year-old, as the older individual usually works until the task is complete and is not afraid of working long hours to get important things done on time. Story 58. Giving people the benefit of the doubt. I believe many people today assign reasons for why someone likes a certain thing, and it is disappointing. Story 59. The knowledge, the memories, the music. Mind you, I am 65, so older people are becoming fewer than they used to be. Story 60. I'm not sure how to explain it, but their vibe is special. My favorite kind of people are those who are comforting yet have a sense of humor because you can tell they have been through difficult experiences. Story 61. I was a door-to-door encyclopedia salesman when I was young. That taught me a lot. I faced threats and dealt with aggressive dogs, but I sold plenty and enjoyed life. Being able to talk to anyone is wonderful. Story 62. To be honest, the way they lived their life and how simple it was makes me wish I had been born back then. It seems so peaceful, but I don't know. Maybe that's just my opinion. Story 63. The greatest lesson my grandfather taught me was how to teach myself. Apply past experiences to new situations, and sometimes just dig in because doing is the best teacher. Many past generations' ability to take action and fix things comes down to those traits. Story 64. Grit. My parents had a hard life and rose from the ashes to provide me and my siblings with a privileged life. They may not fully understand mental health like younger generations do, and I have accepted that. Every generation has its own admirable traits and less favorable qualities. Story 65. I am sure someone has also said this, but I love listening to stories, even the most boring ones. Perhaps it is because my grandmother raised me and I became accustomed to her sharing stories about her life every day. As a result, I developed into an attentive listener. Story 66. I like how people, like my mom, have a very uncomplicated relationship with social media and their smartphones. She posts one of her recent crafts on Facebook, says happy birthday to some friend or relative, watches a few cute dog videos, and chuckles. She updates our family group chat, then returns to gardening, cleaning, reading a book, or watching television. She might even forget her phone for days. When she does check it, it takes about 10 to 15 minutes. Bless her heart. She understands how to use technology better than I do. Story 67. My 43-year-old English teacher has what I call dad days. Days when he sets aside the book my class is studying and offers some of the most genuine advice I've ever heard. A memorable example occurred when I was reading the illustrated version of Frankenstein by Greig Grimley. During the scene of Justine Moritz's trial, no one testified for her. Mr. Cannon then put the book down, removed his glasses, and said, "Listen, when you're in a rough spot, you're going to find out who your friends are." That is unforgettable teaching. The older people I know also possess wisdom that comes only with age and experience. I will always remember him as a teacher. Story 68. They are optimistic and have not failed as much. Because of that, they have huge ambitions and take risks that we all desire deep inside. Story 69. When there is conflict, the immediate conclusion should not be that this person is against everything right and does not deserve to live, or that they no longer have rights in my eyes. Instead, I consider people being petty at work and passive-aggressive social media posts. For them, conflict is not a world-ending catastrophe. Story 70. I like their stories. I love hearing tales about when Coca-Cola cost 25 cents, the clothing styles of that era, and how my grandparents met. I enjoy hearing how my great-grandmother would crochet in her sleep. I truly appreciate the stories from those times. Story 71. I have shared this before, but my late Korean grandparents lived through the Korean War, experienced extreme poverty in South Korea, and contributed to the country's rise as a technological powerhouse. My paternal grandmother often recounted her escape from North Korea, where she was held at gunpoint, ultimately making her way to Seoul. My late maternal grandfather shared his own survival tales when North Korean troops initially overran his village in the southernmost part of Korea, while my maternal grandmother recounted how she passed by mounds of corpses as a child. Both sides of my grandparents succeeded in their careers and used their resources to help those in need. My paternal side assisted other North Korean refugees post-war, while my maternal side supported individuals in his village. Their stories are remarkable. Furthermore, after the war, they all faced struggles, prejudice, both rural versus urban and related to North Korea. Political turmoil. My paternal grandfather was a politician during the dictatorship era, and ultimate success. Much of this stems from their age and experiences, but the modern history of South Korea has been chaotic and, in a way, exciting to live through. Even my parents had fascinating stories to share, such as my mother's professor mysteriously disappearing, potentially linked to protests, the constant presence of tear gas from student demonstrations, and my father joining countless young Koreans in advocating for change. Story 72. Their stories have an energy that makes me want to go back and experience some of them. Story 73. They are much more comfortable with their bodies. I see older individuals socializing without clothes in the locker room, simply watching the game. I have to admire their confidence. Story 74. Nothing. I haven't met a single person who isn't an entitled individual sitting in the house they bought for today's equivalent of 20 pence. Story 75. Pausing to listen and absorb what people say. Listening to understand rather than to respond. Story 76. They don't get offended easily. You can have your sense of humor with them without being reported to human resources. Story 77. How they had everything handed to them on a silver platter. Free college and easy job market, affordable housing, and accessible healthcare. Then they hurt us. Story 78. I'm 32 and grew up in Connecticut. I wouldn't go any farther back than the 1970s. Less mass school shootings have occurred. There have always been school attacks or shootings. I know there were a few mass shootings in the past, but typically there were not as many victims since the firearms were different. The number of times these incidents involved a stolen gun from an adult family member is alarming. It's essential to secure firearms properly, and certain types of guns do not belong on the streets. I know I would have had to walk more as a child, even up a hill to the bus stop. However, it seems somewhat appealing that kids were able to walk around alone or in groups. I don't want that to return, though, because it does increase the risk of child abduction. It will always be a challenging issue to address. I miss the supersized fries at the fast food restaurant. As a woman, I believe men from previous generations managed responsibilities better. They also had an easier time doing so. Life has become increasingly expensive, though I think there was also more sexism back then. I'm not sure I would have coped well with it. I've heard disturbing stories and can barely handle the sexism I face now. Sometimes I miss the time before social media. I'm glad it didn't become prominent until I was in middle school and that I didn't have MySpace. Even when Facebook became popular, I only joined toward the end of high school. On the other hand, it is nice to stay somewhat connected. Navigating this landscape will always be tricky. I often wonder what it would have been like to go through college and early adulthood without being so attached. I suppose I wish I had been born 10 years earlier. I would still have email. A bachelor's degree held significantly more value 20 years ago, and tuition was also more affordable. I understand that abuse was more prevalent in the past, and I experienced an abusive childhood myself, though it wasn't the worst. I believe parents were more mature and set a better example. They likely disciplined more as well, but children tend to imitate what they observe, which contributes to the perception that things are worse. Story 79. Honestly, they are probably very confused right now. The world feels like it is on fire, and it is surprising how Generation Z might resemble them. Story 80. As President Eisenhower once said about then Vice President Nixon, when asked about the man's achievements in office, "Give me a week and I will come up with something." Story 81. I love older people. There are two things I adore. 1. Children. 2. The elderly. They are just so cute. If you mean the older generations, such as our parents and people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, then they certainly have more life experience. It is beneficial to listen to them. They are often wiser and can make accurate predictions. They can help us avoid mistakes they may have made when they were our age. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.